AITA for canceling my best friend's appointment because she owed me money. I am a 22-year-old hairstylist who has been working incredibly hard to build my business from the ground up. I take pride in my work and have invested countless hours into perfecting my craft, marketing my salon, and building a loyal client base. It has not been easy, but I love what I do and genuinely enjoy helping people feel confident and beautiful. One of my closest friends, Jane, is a year older than me and has been part of my life for years. We have shared so many moments together, from late-night talks to celebrating each other's milestones. Jane has always been someone I could count on, and I thought she felt the same about me. I value our friendship deeply, which is probably why I let things get as complicated as they have. A few months ago, Jane had a big birthday coming up, and she was in a panic because her usual hairstylist canceled on her at the last minute. She called me, frantic and nearly in tears, saying that she had an important dinner planned and needed her hair done as soon as possible. Normally, I require clients to book appointments through my salon's website, where they enter their card details. This is partly for convenience, but also to protect myself from situations where people might refuse to pay or cancel without notice. However, Jane is one of my closest friends, and I wanted to help her out. I figured it would not be a big deal to make an exception this one time. After all, she was my friend, and she was in a tough spot. During the appointment, Jane was thrilled. She kept gushing about how amazing her hair looked and how grateful she was that I had made time for her on such short notice. I even gave her the friends and family discount, which I rarely do because my work is my livelihood. She was ecstatic and could not stop talking about how perfect her hair was going to look in all her birthday pictures. At the end of the appointment, when it was time to settle up, Jane casually said, "Oh, I thought this was going to be a birthday present." I froze. I had never said anything to imply that her appointment would be free. In fact, I made it very clear while she was sitting in my chair that I was giving her a discount, not a free service. I reminded her of this, and she quickly apologized, saying she must have misunderstood. She explained that she did not have the money on her at the moment, but would get paid the next day and would transfer the money to me immediately. I trusted her because she is my friend. I told myself that it was just a misunderstanding and not a big deal. A week went by, and I had not heard anything from Jane about the payment. I decided to send her a polite message, reminding her about the money she owed me. She responded, saying that she could not pay me right now, but would, soon. I let it slide again because, honestly, I did not want to make a big deal out of it. The service was not outrageously expensive, and it was just a rude touch-up. I figured she might be going through a rough time financially and would pay me when she could. Weeks turned into months, and I had almost forgotten about the whole thing. Life got busy, and I was focused on my business and other clients. But then, out of the blue, Jane reached out again, saying she needed another emergency appointment. She told me it was urgent and that she could not wait the 48 hours required to book through my website. At this point, I was annoyed. She had not paid me for the last appointment, and now she was asking for another one without even addressing the money she still owed me. I told her that I could not take her appointment unless she booked through the proper channels. She got upset, saying that she thought I was her friend in accusing me of not caring about her emergency. I calmly explained that my booking system exists for a reason and that it is not fair to my other clients, or to myself, for me to make exceptions for her when she has already broken my trust by not paying me for the last service. She promised, again, that she would pay me back after this new appointment, but I just could not believe her. She has made so many promises to pay me back, and each time, she has failed to follow through. I told her that if she paid what she owed me first, we could discuss a future appointment, but until then, I could not help her. This led to a heated argument. She accused me of being money-hungry and putting my business before our friendship. She even said that I was being unreasonable because it's just here and implied that I should be willing to help her out as a friend. I feel like I have been more than fair with Jane. I have given her a discount, trusted her to pay me back, and been patient for months. But at the end of the day, my work is my livelihood. It is how I pay my bills and support myself. I cannot afford to keep providing free services to someone who has shown no respect for my time or effort. I value our friendship, but I feel like she is taking advantage of me and my kindness. Now, our friendship feels strained. Jane is upset with me for refusing to take her appointment, and I am frustrated that she has put me in this position. I feel like I am being forced to choose between standing up for myself and maintaining our friendship. part of me wonders if I am overreacting, but another part of me feels like I am just enforcing a boundary that should have been respected in the first place. So, am I wrong for refusing to give her another emergency appointment? Should I have just let it slide and help her out again? And if not, how do I handle this situation without completely ruining our friendship? I feel stuck and would really appreciate any advice on how to move forward. Update 1. After our argument, I assumed Jane would take some time to cool off and reflect on how things had escalated between us. I thought maybe she would realize how unfair she had been or at least make an effort to address the situation. But, to my surprise, just a few weeks later, she texted me as if nothing had ever happened. No apology, no mention of the money she owed me, and certainly no acknowledgement of the argument we had. Instead, she asked if I could do her hair for an upcoming wedding she was attending. The audacity left me stunned. After everything we had been through, she thought it was perfectly fine to act like nothing had happened and continue to ask for favors. It felt like a slap in the face. I had bent over backward for her before, only to be met with broken promises and blatant disrespect for my time and effort. And now, here she was again, asking for more without even addressing the debt she had accumulated. I took a deep breath and reminded her, as politely as I could, about the outstanding payment. I told her I couldn't take her appointment until she paid me what she owed. But instead of owning up to her actions, Jane became defensive. She claimed she was waiting on a paycheck and insisted she would pay me after the wedding. She made it sound like I was the unreasonable one, like it was my fault for not trusting her despite the fact that she had already broken her promises multiple times. Against my better judgment, I decided to give her one last chance. I told myself that maybe this time would be different. But I also decided I wasn't going to take any more risks. If I agreed to do her hair, it would be on my terms. I told her she would need to pay up front before I started. She reluctantly agreed, though it was clear she wasn't happy about it. She transferred half the amount as a deposit and promised to send the rest as soon as her paycheck came through. The day of the appointment arrived, and everything went smoothly. Jane seemed thrilled with how her hair turned out, just like she had been the last time. She gushed about how perfect it was for the wedding and how grateful she was that I had been able to squeeze her in. For a brief moment, I felt hopeful that things between us might finally get back on track. Maybe she had learned her lesson and would follow through this time. But, unsurprisingly, the second payment never came. Days turned into weeks, and every time I reached out to remind her, she either ignored me or found a way to dodge the topic. She always had some excuse: her paycheck was late, she had unexpected expenses, or she simply forgot. At first, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, but as the excuses piled up, it became clear that she had no intention of paying me back. What made it worse was when I found out through mutual friends that Jane was planning a vacation to Miami. She was excitedly talking about her itinerary, posting about flights and outfits on social media, and counting down the days until her trip. It stunned deeply to know that she could afford to book a trip, buy new clothes, and plan a luxurious vacation, but she couldn't find it in her to pay me what she owed for my work. The disrespect was blatant, and it felt like she didn't care at all about how her actions were affecting me. At that point, I realized this was no longer about the money. It was about the principle. Jane's actions showed a complete lack of respect for me as a friend and as a professional. She didn't see my work as valuable, even though it was my livelihood. She had no problem taking advantage of my kindness and generosity, repeatedly putting her own wants above my boundaries and my needs. I started to pull back from our friendship. I stopped reaching out, stopped liking her posts, and stopped engaging in conversations where she was present. It wasn't out of spite. I simply couldn't pretend everything was okay when I felt so disrespected and taken for granted. Meanwhile, Jane didn't seem to notice or care. She was too busy planning her vacation and living her life, oblivious to the damage she had caused. When her Miami trip came around, I couldn't help but feel a mix of anger and sadness. While she was posting beach photos and glamorous nights out, I was left reflecting on the years of friendship we had shared and wondering how it had come to this. I thought about all the times I had been there for her, all the ways I had supported her, and how easily she had dismissed my feelings and taken advantage of my kindness. Update 2: A month later, I received an unexpected call from my mom. The moment I answered, I could tell something was wrong. Her tone was sharp, almost accusatory. Without any small talk, she launched into the reason for her call: "Why are you harassing Jane about money?" I was blindsided. My mind raced as I tried to figure out what she was talking about. It didn't take long for her to explain that Jane had gone to my parents, spinning a completely fabricated version of events. According to Jane, I was demanding outrageous sums of money from her for a couple of quick touch-ups, and making her life unnecessarily difficult during what she described as a tough financial time. I was stunned. Jane had taken a situation, twisted it beyond recognition, and dragged my parents into it. Worse, my mom sounded like she believed her. She told me that Jane had called her in tears, saying she felt betrayed and embarrassed that I was prioritizing money over our friendship. My mom, who has always been a firm believer in kindness and generosity, had apparently fallen for Jane's story. She started telling me that I needed to be more understanding, reminding me that friendships shouldn't be about money and implying that I was overreacting. Hearing this made my blood boil. Jane wasn't just ignoring the money she owed me anymore, she was actively trying to make me look like the villain in this situation. I felt an overwhelming mix of anger and disbelief. I tried to explain to my mom what had really happened, walking her through the entire story from start to finish. I told her how I had gone out of my way to help Jane multiple times, only to be met with empty promises and excuses. I even sent her screenshots of our conversations, where Jane had repeatedly promised to pay me back and failed to follow through. My mom read through everything but remained unconvinced. She kept repeating that it wasn't worth losing a friendship over money and that I should just let it go. My dad, on the other hand, sided with me. He was more pragmatic and understood that my work was my livelihood. He agreed that Jane was taking advantage of me and told my mom that it wasn't fair to expect me to keep giving in. While it was reassuring to have someone on my side, it didn't erase the frustration of having my own mother sympathize with Jane after everything she had done. 4 days after that call, I couldn't stop thinking about what Jane had done. It wasn't just the money anymore, it was the blatant lack of respect and the audacity to drag my family into it. I began replaying all the moments in our friendship where Jane had pushed boundaries or taken advantage of my kindness. It was like a pattern was emerging, and I realized this wasn't the first time she had put her needs above mine. This was just the first time it had escalated to this level. Not long after, I started hearing whispers from mutual friends. Apparently, Jane had been telling people a version of the story that made me look greedy and unreasonable. She claimed I was obsessed with money and was trying to milk her for more than what the services were worth. She made it seem like I was the one taking advantage of her, conveniently leaving out the part where she had never paid me back and had booked services knowing full well she wouldn't pay. Hearing this hurt more than I expected. I had considered Jane a close friend, someone I had trusted and gone out of my way to help. And now, she was dragging my name through the mud to cover up her own actions. The final straw came when I found out Jane had posted about me on social media, though she didn't mention my name directly. She wrote a vague post about people who care more about money than friendship and how true friends should support each other, not put each other down. Several mutual friends commented on her post, offering words of sympathy and agreeing with her message. I felt a wave of anger and humiliation as I realized how far she was willing to go to protect her image, even if it meant tarnishing mine. At that point, I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep letting Jane's actions consume my energy and affect my mental health. I started distancing myself from her entirely, cutting off all communication and making it clear to our mutual friends that I wasn't interested in discussing her or the situation anymore. I also stopped engaging with the friends who seemed to have sided with her, realizing that anyone who couldn't see through her lies wasn't someone I needed in my life. The hardest part was dealing with my mom. She continued to insist that I should make amends with Jane, even after seeing the evidence of how she had treated me. It created tension between us, and I had to set firm boundaries, telling her that I wasn't going to let anyone guilt me into forgiving someone who had so blatantly disrespected me. Update 3. The breaking point came a week later when I was in the middle of a busy day at the salon. I was working with a regular client, juggling back-to-back appointments, and trying to keep everything running smoothly. Out of nowhere, Jane walked in. She hadn't booked an appointment, hadn't given me a heads up, she just strolled into the salon as if nothing had happened. At first, I thought she might just be stopping by to talk, but the moment I saw her expression, I knew something was off. She looked agitated, but also overly confident, like she had convinced herself that showing up unannounced was perfectly reasonable. She greeted me with a tone that was far too casual for someone who had been dodging me for months. Then she dropped her request. She needed me to squeeze her in for a quick styling because she had a date that night. I couldn't believe the audacity. I was fully booked, and even if I hadn't been, there was no way I was going to accommodate her after everything she had put me through. I calmly told her that I couldn't fit her in and reminded her, firmly but without raising my voice, that she still hadn't paid me for the last 2 services I had provided. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment she would acknowledge her behavior, apologize, or at least try to make amends. But instead, Jane snapped. Right there in the middle of my salon, she raised her voice and unleashed a tirade that left me, and everyone else in the room, completely stunned. She accused me of being a terrible friend, saying that I cared more about money than the people in my life. She called me greedy and claimed that I had changed ever since I started my business. Her words were sharp and loud enough that my other clients couldn't help but overhear. The entire room went silent except for Jane's ranting. I felt my face flush with embarrassment, but I kept my composure. I let her finish, refusing to engage or escalate the situation. When she realized I wasn't going to argue back, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The sound echoed through the salon, leaving everyone frozen in place. My clients, many of whom had been coming to me for years, looked at me with a mix of shock and sympathy. One of them even muttered, "Are you okay?" as I tried to compose myself and continue working. The scene stayed with me for the rest of the day. Even after my appointments were done and the salon was quiet, I couldn't shake the anger and humiliation I felt. Jane's behavior had crossed every possible line, and it was clear that she had no respect for me, not as a friend and certainly not as a professional. I realized I had been holding on to the idea of our friendship for far too long, hoping she would change or at least show some remorse. But that moment in the salon was the final push I needed to let her go completely. That evening, I made the decision to cut her out of my life for good. I blocked her on all social media, deleted her number, and resolved not to respond to any more of her attempts to contact me. I had already given her more chances than she deserved, and I wasn't going to allow her to disrupt my life or my business any longer. Over the next few days, she tried to reach out. She left a few voicemails, alternating between apologizing and blaming me. In one message, she sounded genuinely sorry, saying she missed our friendship and wanted to make things right. But in the very next message, she accused me of overreacting and said I was the one ruining everything. It was a roller coaster of emotions, and I refused to get on it. Eventually, Jane stopped trying to contact me. Her silence was both a relief and a strange kind of sadness. For all her faults, Jane had been a big part of my life for years. Letting go of that friendship felt like closing a chapter that I had never expected to end this way. But at the same time, I knew it was necessary. I couldn't keep letting her drag me down or compromise my boundaries. The silver lining in all of this was the clarity it brought me. I started to reflect on my relationships, not just with Jane, but with everyone in my life. I realized how important it was to surround myself with people who truly valued and respected me. Since cutting ties with Jane, my business has continued to thrive. I've gained new clients who appreciate my work and have built stronger connections with the friends and family who genuinely support me. Looking back, I can see how much I learned from the whole ordeal. I learned the importance of setting boundaries and standing up for myself, even when it's uncomfortable. I learned that true friends don't take advantage of you or make you feel like your worth is tied to what you can do for them. And I learned that sometimes, letting go of a toxic relationship is the best thing you can do for your own peace of mind. As for Jane, I haven't seen or heard from her in months. She's still active on social media, but I've stopped looking at her posts or keeping up with what she's doing. Do I miss her? Sometimes, yes. There are moments when I think about the good times we had and wonder if things could have turned out differently. But I don't miss feeling used or disrespected. Letting go of that friendship was hard, but it was the best decision I could have made for my career, my mental health, and my self-respect. Update 4. Months had passed since I cut Jane out of my life, and I had all but given up hope of ever seeing the money she owed me. I had moved on, focusing on my business, my clients, and rebuilding my peace of mind. Jane was no longer a part of my world, and I had accepted that. But then, out of nowhere, my phone buzzed with a notification that made my heart stop. It was for my payment app. Jane had transferred the exact amount she owed me, down to the last penny. Attached was a single cryptic note that read, "I'm sorry." I stared at the screen, stunned. My emotions went into overdrive, shock, anger, disbelief, and, strangely, a flicker of vindication. After all the excuses, the arguments, the humiliation, and the blatant disrespect, she had finally sent the money. But it felt hollow. There was no message to explain her actions, no real acknowledgement of the hurt she had caused, just a belated payment and 2 words that couldn't undo months of toxicity. For a moment, I considered reaching out, asking her why she had finally paid me back or what had prompted this sudden gesture. But as quickly as the thought came, I dismissed it. I realized I didn't care about her reasoning anymore. The money wasn't about repairing the friendship, it was just a long overdue obligation. Whatever guilt or closure Jane hoped to achieve with that transfer was her burden, not mine. As I closed the notification, I felt a sense of finality wash over me. The chapter with Jane was over, not with a dramatic confrontation or heartfelt apology, but with a silent transfer of money that felt more like a transaction than an act of reconciliation. It was dramatic in its own way, a quiet resolution to a story that had been anything but. And for the first time in months, I felt completely free.